an informal breathing exercise called Udgit Pranayama, in which we say Hari Om, and we say Hari Om as we open our throats. And so Hari Om, like this. And what this does is help to open the throat center. And it's particularly good for me since I'll be speaking, but I do encourage questions in the class, so hopefully it'll help you open your throat so that you feel free to ask questions. Okay? So let's do 3 Hari Oms together, and I'll start. Hari Om. Hari Om. Om Namo Vratapadaye Namo Ganapadaye Namah Pramatapadaye Namaste Stulambodharaya Ekadantaya Vigna Vinashine Shivasutaya Shri Varadamurtaye Namo Namaha Om Shri Sarvebhyo Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay, so welcome to this seminar on Dharma. So what is Dharma? A long time ago, our ancestors found out 3 essential things about human beings. The first one is human beings want to be happy. That'll be $200, please. Thank you for coming. You're welcome. Regardless of color, creed, or culture, regardless of who we are, male or female, we all want to be happy. The second thing they found was that in order to have durable happiness, lasting happiness, it is better to live with nature rather than against nature. Now, for short-term pleasure, you can live against nature. You can jump off a cliff and feel the air through your hair and the exhilarating feeling in your stomach until nature catches up to you. You hit the floor, right? For long-term durable fulfillment, we have to understand how to live with nature. So everyone's going, yeah, that sounds pretty good, but how do we do it? So the third part is that in order to find durable happiness and live with nature, you have to understand Dharma. And Dharma is one thing. The word Dharma means universal law, or in the case of us personally, the purpose, the universal law that guides our lives. But it is useful to look at Dharma in 5 different categories. The first of these is the physical. And the science that arose to describe the physical Dharma of human beings is Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is called the science of life. And mostly, not all, but mostly deals with everything from the skin in. What makes you a human physiological being and how to optimize that for longevity and health. So the areas affected are everything from the skin in, for the most part. And the element associated here is earth. Now, there's one more category that we need to put here. And we're going to call that the physical correlate. So the earth has to do with the earth. The physical correlate here is plants and food. And as many of you know, there's a saying in Ayurveda that says, if your diet is not right, no medicine will work. If your diet is right, no medicine is needed. So even in the Sanskrit, and of course I can't get away from this, but even in the Sanskrit, the word for plant is oshadhi. The word for medicine is oshadam. These two are intimately related. The word for food, the word for medicine and the word for plant are essentially the same word. So Ayurveda fundamentally has to do with how to understand the dharma of the physical body. Make sense? To understand the dharma of your environment. The science of Vastu was developed. Vastu Shastra, otherwise just known as Vastu. Vastu, you may know in different cultures, is called feng shui. We call it interior design. It's essentially learning to live with the environment, everything from the skin out. From our skin to the skin of the planet, to the atmosphere. So Vastu has a lot to say about how we treat our environment, how we live in this world. And Vastu and Ayurveda are closely related. For example, one of the fundamental precepts of Vastu, and I only have a little bit of board here, so is that the center should always remain empty. The center of any space. And the word for that is called the Brahmasthana, the place of the spirit. In Ayurveda, Ayurveda honors this principle because we are microcosms of the universe. We're microcosms of our environment. So if this law is true in Vastu, it should be true in Ayurveda. In Ayurveda, you should eat meals 5 or 6 hours apart. Why is that? Because we also have a center. It's called the GI tract. And that center also should be empty. Because when our center is empty, it allows the spirit to come in. How is that? Well, physiologically, the GI tract, the gut, is responsible for 95% of serotonin production. It's responsible for 75% of our immune system. When we dumb it down by forcing it to constantly digest our food, we're in essence saying, here, digest this food, you can get to immunity later. You can get to maintaining health later. And eventually our health breaks down. So this principle of Vastu, which says keep the center empty, is the same as the dietary practices in Ayurveda, which state that fasting should be an essential part of good health. Now, this isn't just related to Ayurveda. What is the definition of yoga as per the Yoga Sutras? Anybody? Yogaha chitta vritti nirodha tadadrashtu svarupeva sthanam vritti sarupya mitaratra. Yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind stuff. Then the seer abides in itself. When there are fluctuations, the seer becomes one with the fluctuations. Well, vritti, this word vritti means wave or fluctuation. When there is food moving through the gut, the villi and microvilli in the body literally create vrittis. And so, by extension, if you have food in your gut and there is stuff going on in your stomach, you can't have yoga. Because yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. It's the cessation of all vritti, the fluctuation. Which is why yogis and yoginis are very disciplined at fasting, at controlling their food intake. Because they understand that even though you might be very good at sitting, you've done all your asanas to make sure that you're comfortable, But if you're still digesting that cheeseburger from last night, no matter how many mantras you say, part of your mind is here. Because the gut is a second brain. It's called the enteric nervous system, and it has its independent wiring, just as our brains have their own independent wiring. So this is our second thinking center, and as long as it's busy digesting our food, then you can't have chitta vritti nirodha. Unless you're a fully enlightened master, then it's okay. But to get there, we have to learn to keep the center open. Make sense? So in this way, Vastu and Ayurveda are linked. Vastu is understanding the relationship between you and your environment. Ayurveda is the relationship between you and your internal environment. Okay. Then, and the element associated with Vastu is water. So, water, both in Western culture and in Eastern culture, is a source of life, prosperity, and culture itself. So a lot of the rules of Vastu have to do with where water goes on your property. One of these rules is that water should always be to the east and slightly to the north, but never to the west. So properties that have water, swimming pools, wells, and we'll be talking a little bit more about this on Saturday and on Sunday. But property that has its water to the east is considered lucky. Property that has its water to the west and to the south is considered unlucky in that there are complications. We're going to cover some remedies over the next couple days on how to remedy these things if you have them. But fundamentally, that's the rule of Vastu. Now, one of the words in Sanskrit for east is purva. Everybody say purva. Purva. Purva means east, but it also means before. So, here's another link with Vastu and Ayurveda. And some of you, those of you who have your handouts, will have something that I call the top 5 things that you should be doing but are not doing, according to Ayurveda. And one of these is drinking water before your meals. And I was like, all right, yeah, I know that. That's okay. Studies that were recently conducted on overweight individuals showed that when they drank water 15 to 30 minutes before food, they not only lost weight, but they changed their body composition. That means that not only did they go from being a large pear to a smaller pear shape, they actually changed the shape of their bodies without any additional exercise, without any other changes in their diet compared to the placebo group. So why do you think that is? Any ideas? It changed the metabolism, but how? Why did the water before food change it and not after food? The distribution of? Hydrochloric acid. Very good. So water drunk before meals on an empty stomach buffers your stomach lining, allowing your stomach to have better kledaka kapha in a thicker bicarbonate buffer. When it's dehydrated, the buffer is very narrow. When the buffer is thick, the stomach signals, hey, I've got plenty of buffer, give me more HCl, I can handle it. So that HCl gets dumped into the stomach, and now you're hungry. So I don't know if you guys have had this experience where you have a tall glass of water on an empty stomach, and 30 minutes later, you're hungry. You're ready to eat. That's your Agni, your digestive power saying, hey, give me food, I'm ready. So that's great. And then the water moves through your system, you have your food, everything is great. Drinking water after food does the opposite. Now you have food in your stomach, it's mixed with your HCl. But water is fairly alkaline compared to hydrochloric acid. It's about a 7, whereas hydrochloric acid is a pH of 7, whereas HCl is about pH of 2, more or less. So by drinking water after your meals, you dilute that. So what does this have to do with Dharma? It has everything to do with Dharma, because Dharma links everything from the physical, from your skin in, everything about how you relate to your environment, and as you're going to see in a minute, how you relate to the cosmos as well. So these disciplines, even though there's a line between them, they are interrelated. So I just want to convey that. And the principles of Vastu, to be a good Vastu practitioner, you have to understand Ayurveda. To be a good Ayurvedic practitioner, you have to understand a little bit of Vastu. Make sense? Okay. All right, so the third level of Dharma is the social. And it has to do with the Dharma types. And this is everything from the skin out, but this has to do with the non-physical environment. Things like, what kind of job is best for me? How do I best relate with the spiritual, with God? So this would be the non-physical environment. Okay. Yeah, so the physical correlate here for a Vastu is civilization itself. How to organize cities, how to organize your home in the physical environment in general. Culture and wealth as well. Then for the Dharma type, sorry, it's not air, it's fire. Okay. So the idea of the Dharma type is to take us to our highest level of manifestation as human beings. Sure, we can all work to survive. We can all have a job that pays us enough to keep us relatively secure in this world. But how do we actualize our individual talents, what we were born to do? So the Dharma type helps to answer that question. Okay? And the element being fire, the physical correlate is, and this is maybe not a physical correlate, but it's simply energy and ambition. The fire element has to do with helping you rise up, helping you to be more than you can be. The fire element says, okay, I'm a human being, but what can I accomplish? What can I do while I'm here on this planet? What's my purpose? And so ambition, creativity, the ability to make and use tools, and creative self-expression has to do with the Dharma type. Okay? And I know that's not necessarily a physical correlate, but we'll just call it energy. Okay. So the next level is the spiritual. The next level of Dharma. So I've learned how to relate to my body. I understand that there are rules for interacting with my environment. I understand that there are rules, there are laws that govern my own personal expression based on my own unique DNA and genetic makeup. There are also rules that tell us how to relate with the divine. And this is the realm of the spiritual traditions of the world. This is the realm of yoga, the realm of Vedanta, and all the other spiritual traditions that help us interface with the divine. The element here is air. Okay. And the relationship here is, again, to the non-local environment. The air element has to do with communication, It has to do with speech. It has to do with mantra. And this word, we call this word inspiration. So even beyond your dharma as a human being, say to be a great teacher or to be a great ruler or athlete, you have an even higher dharma. And our spiritual traditions talk about this. Finally, we have what I call, in my term, cosmic dharma. And this is covered by Jyotish. The element here is space. And this has literally to do with how we relate to outer space. So everything from the skin of our planet out into the cosmos. So, outer space. The planets and the stars in our physical universe. So, okay. So what does this have to do with what we're going to talk about today? Well, today and over the course of this weekend, I'm going to talk to you about these 5 levels of Dharma. It takes a lifetime to master Ayurveda. Actually, it takes multiple lifetimes if you believe in such things. If you don't believe in such things, it still takes a very long time. It takes a lifetime to master Vastu. Believe me, it takes many lifetimes to master Jyotish. My own teachers of Jyotish, alas, lamentably, as they say it, I'm on my 8th lifetime. It takes a long time. The good news is, it doesn't take very long to understand and apply the Dharma types. So, inasmuch as the Dharma types are right in the middle of this 5-fold classification, they sort of straddle the other 4. They're right in between. So I'm going to present this as a model for helping us evolve into the beings that we can and probably should be over the course of the next couple of days. And I'm going to incorporate some Ayurveda. I'm going to incorporate a fair bit of Jyotish, because Jyotisha helps us to understand our relationship to the sum total of karma, the sum total of this universe. And who was it who just had? I'm going to maybe embarrass you. Is it okay? Can you tell your story just briefly of what you told me earlier?
What you told me?
Yeah.
Well, your flyer came to my email announcing your book, I think it was. And I really felt like you had a message for me. So I called you up and I said, would you do a Jyotish reading for me? You said, oh, no, I don't do those anymore. I said, well, please, and I begged you to give me a Jyotish message. And finally, on a Sunday night, for 30 minutes, you gave me a message. And you said, within a year, you're going to have a major initiation and get your body ready this year, because it's going to be really big. And so a year later, I went to India and had a big initiation of awakening.
Yeah.
So it was a powerful message that you gave me.
And the thing is, it's not me. The message wasn't me. The idea was this was...
The avenue of...
I'm just some beer mug that's holding the content. I feel like a beer mug.
I was very grateful for your message.
The idea is that this is a vidya. And a vidya, it doesn't mean science, by the way. So those of you watching, I know you're already marking me off here. Vidya means a body of knowledge. And it is a feminine word that is akin to the word muse. In the Greek, they use the word muse. And when you're possessed by a muse, she speaks through you. So all of these disciplines are vidyas. They're bodies of knowledge that are anthropomorphized as living beings. I've put the word science because it's an approximate translation of this word, but it's not what that word means. So it's your horoscope that had that message for you. So Sunday, I'm going to be teaching you guys, everyone who's in the seminar will receive their chart, and I'll be teaching you how to read your own chart. Not me, some guy telling you this is going to happen to you, because that's fine, but it's even more empowering when you can see it. Oh, this is my purpose. Oh, this is my hang-up in your own chart. So Sunday we'll be talking about how to incorporate some of Jyotisha's principles. We're going to stay away from yoga because I don't do a lot of yoga. I like to philosophize about it, but not do a lot of it, obviously. We will be talking a lot about the Dharma types, again, because they are a very easy entrance into all of this stuff. And understanding your Dharma type can help you understand things like, what is the best diet for me? Now, of course, Ayurveda does talk about that, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. You should eat certain foods if you're Vata, certain foods if you're Pitta, certain foods if you're Kapha. And in addition to that, if you know that you're, say, an educator, then you know, as an educator, nonviolence is your primary commandment. So for you, a vegetarian diet, a nonviolent diet, a special organic diet would be even more preferable. If you're a warrior and a Pitta, then you can have the Pitta diet, but it doesn't necessarily have to be nonviolent, but it should be mostly protein. It can still be vegetarian, but you should not eat a lot of sugars if you're a warrior Dharma type. So we're going to talk about the health correlations of each Dharma type. If you're a merchant, there are other things that are allowed, other things that are not allowed, according to your Dharma. Okay? So the Vedic system is all about customization. What's right for you? So if you came and asked me and said, hey, is this herb, I'm a Christian, is this practice good for me? I'll ask, it depends. What is your Dharma type? What is your dosha? Right? What is your station in life? Are you a householder or not? It's all about customization. So we're going to learn to customize more and more until we get a specific idea of what your Dharma is, both in the physical realm, in your relationship to your environment, and so on. Okay? Any questions so far? I know this is all kind of brainy right now, all in the area of theory, but we're going to be applying it pretty quick here. Any questions? So I'm looking at my notes here because I'm notorious for not using notes, and I was warned this time I should use notes. And just because I don't want to miss anything. Okay, so I'm going to introduce the 5 Dharma types here, and as I do, I want to preface this by saying these 5 archetypes are not the same as the 5 castes or the 4 castes in India. And there are 2 fundamental differences. Number 1, they are not hierarchical. That means if you're an educator, you're no better than an outsider or a laborer or a warrior or a merchant. They are not like this, they are like this. Okay? Not like this, like this. Second, they are not hereditary. Just because your parents were born educators doesn't mean you are an educator by virtue of your birth. At some point in history, that may have been true. Thousands of years ago, when bloodlines were much more sequestered, much more limited. But it's my belief that we carry the genetics and the DNA of many different Dharma types through mixing. And so it's not, you can't predict your Dharma type by just looking at your parents. Okay? So these are the 2 caveats. They're not hierarchical. Just because mom and dad was something doesn't mean you're that thing. Hereditary, and they're not hierarchical. Okay, so what are they? Well, here are the types. And I'm going to use black because I guess green doesn't show up very well. And this is in no particular order. Now, clients often ask me, well, that's great, Simon. There's 5 types and there's 7 billion people on the planet. So what? How does this help? It's a good question. How does this help? How does it help to know whether you are a man or a woman? Kind of helps. Let's imagine for a second that you woke up tomorrow and you didn't know whether you were male or female. Think about the little decisions in your life that would be much more complicated. Just not having that information. These are two archetypes, male, female. Everything from how to dress, which bathroom to use. Now, and for some people, this is a real issue today. They are, they're a minority. They're transgender issues. These are real issues. But for most of you, they're not. We take it for granted. And I would posit that by virtue of knowing your Dharma type, many decisions in your life become that much easier. Just like knowing whether you're a man or a woman. Yes, there are only 5 Dharma types. But they are able to describe who we are in such an elegant way, as I've researched this, that it's my belief that they are fundamentally, the word archetype comes from the Greek, which means arche, means ancient or old. Hard to see this, huh? Arche, like archaeology. And type. And the word type means model or mold. So these are literally the ancient molds or models into which creation fashioned humankind. Thank you. And I think that they are in our genes and our DNA. And one day, we'll be able to find them. So maybe one day take a blood test, and along with telling you if you have risk of diabetes and hypertension, your doctor will say, oh, and you're an outsider Dharma type. Congratulations, here's a lollipop. A black lollipop, because that's the color for outsiders. So, outsiders go with black and white, the extreme colors. So, a lot of people who wear black and white, does that mean they're outsiders? Probably. Or they're in an outsider life cycle. They're passing through that period, and they're influenced by it. So, one day you'll be able to take a test, a blood test. So, we're not there yet, and for that reason, the book has a test. Those of you who don't know what your Dharma type is, there's a simple 10-question test you can take in the book. Alternately, we can find it in your horoscope. So we'll be looking at your charts on Sunday, and if you're still not sure what your Dharma type is by then we can help you determine that. All right. So, 5 types. 5 types make choices in life easier, like what's the best job for me, what's the best diet, and so on and so on. We talked about that. So let's get into some concrete examples. One of the things that the Dharma types will help make very clear, very easy, is the spiritual tradition most appropriate to us. Now, how many of you are familiar with yoga philosophy? How many of you are not familiar with it? Okay. So we've heard of these things called the 5 yamas and the 5 niyamas. The 5 yamas are remarkably similar to the last 5 commandments among the 10 commandments. By the way, the 4th commandment is keep the Sabbath holy in the Judeo-Christian tradition. And that is nothing but a fast. That is, again, the principles of Vastu saying keep the center open. Keep the center of your week, or part of your week, a day of your week, open. Fast from work. This idea of fasting comes up a lot in Vedic traditions. Taking a break. Breathing out is a fast from oxygen. And there are yoga practices of pranayama that have developed this idea to help you make the most of the blood oxygen in your body by controlling your breath. Fasting from work is, in fact, one of the 10 commandments. In fact, you can't even light a fire on the Sabbath. And if you're a really practicing Jew, you don't do it. And one of my clients and friends, whose name is Katie Singer, she has written a book on the dangers of EMF emissions, the microwaves that are all around us from the Wi-Fi and other projections, and the health dangers to children, etc. So the idea of not lighting a fire also means you don't turn on your computer, you don't turn on your internet router, you don't turn on your TV. For us today, that's really, really healthy. That's a good thing. So there's the idea of fasting, of creating open space and allowing the spirit to come in. Okay, so the 5 yamas are remarkably similar to the last 5 commandments. And those of you who have handouts, I've taken the liberty of printing out the 10 commandments for you. Because what are the 10 commandments if not prescriptions on how to live a righteous, Dharma-filled life? Yes, they're very old, therefore maybe a different culture, but there's truth in them. So the 5 yamas say, ahimsa. The equivalent is, don't kill. Satya. Don't lie, tell the truth. Asteya. Everybody say asteya. Asteya. Do not steal. Don't steal, man. Okay? Ahimsa satyam asteya. Brahmacharya. Everybody say brahmacharya. Oh, yeah, that's good. Brahmacharya, which literally means walk with God, means don't fornicate in the 5 commandments. Don't sleep with your neighbor's wife. Don't. Ahimsa satyamaste brahmacharya parigraha. Aparigraha. Aparigraha. You can leave that out. Means don't covet your neighbor's stuff. This word literally means aparigraha, don't grab around. So don't covet. Okay? These are the same. So who stole from whom? Whose is the copyright infringement? The first? Yeah, so who knows who was older? The idea is that these 5 commandments are very general, very nice. Yes, we should not kill, but sometimes we do when we go to war, so how do we reconcile that? And we kill animals, we eat them, so I'm not really sure. I forget about it. Satyam, well, yeah, I should tell the truth, but, if I tell my boss the truth, he will fire me. So in the interest of me, really being able to provide for my family, I'm not going to tell the truth, so screw that. Okay, asteya. Don't steal. Well, I took a pen from the doctor's office. That's not a big deal, right? So which one do we really follow? Your Dharma type will help you customize. This sounds like an infomercial. Don't know your commandment? Find out your Dharma type. It will help you customize just the right plan for you. So that's the idea, though. Customizing. What's that?
You get to pick and choose.
In a sense, yes, and in a sense, you've already picked and chosen. You've picked and chosen by having the horoscope that you have, by being born who you are. It's there. So that's one thing that we in the West, as Americans especially, don't like to hear, that the Dharma type is fixed. You can try as hard as you want to change who you are. My teacher Mantraji says, people try so hard to be someone else, it's hard enough to be yourself. Why don't just do that? It's hard enough to be yourself. Why are you trying to be someone else? So the Dharma type you are is fixed. However, every one of us goes through different life cycles. Just as, for example, you might be born in America, but when you travel to France, you're experiencing a different environment. Your Americanness comes out in a different way than it would if you were living in Hawaii or living in Germany or living somewhere else. Does that make sense? So your life cycle is like, your Dharma type is like your core nationality, who you are. Your life cycle is like who you are through different stages in your life and different places, different countries that you visit. I hope that metaphor makes sense. If not, I'm going to stop using metaphors. Okay. So ahimsa works with, especially with the educator type. Satyam is for the warrior. Asteya for the merchant. Brahmacharya for the laborer. And aparigraha for the outsider. And likewise this way. Why is that? The reason is because it's easy. Who you are, by virtue of you being who you are, it's just easier to follow this path. I'm an educator, I'm a wimp, I'm cowardly, so I don't want to be violent, I don't want to get my butt kicked. I'm being a little facetious. But famous educator, Mohandas Gandhi, he's the epitome of nonviolence. Doesn't mean you can't accomplish anything in the world, but you do it with this primary virtue. Make sense? And all of these virtues come easy for these Dharma types. If you're not an educator, let's say you're a warrior. Well, the warrior's job is to protect others. Their job in ancient Vedic society was to, if a wolf came into the village, you're supposed to chase it away. How are you going to chase it away if you're a priest going, oh, it's also a living creature, so let it eat the babies, it's okay. No, you're a warrior, your job is to protect. You got to kick that wolf out. Maybe you have to kill it. Your job is to protect that which cannot protect itself. And in the exercise of that dharma, you may have to break some eggs. So for the warrior, satyam is the primary virtue. Satyam has to do with speaking the truth. And for warriors, it comes easy. You walk into a room, the warrior looks at you. Man, you look horrible in that jacket. Why are you even wearing that? They tell the truth. It comes naturally. Satyam, and that's why they also make good doctors, because they can deliver bad news. They make, in the ideal sense, that's why they go into law, into politics, into martial arts and police. Do you have marijuana with you? Don't lie to me. I know if you're going to lie to me. Warriors can... I don't know why I'm picking up. Wait, where's Shane today? We're going to delete that part. Okay. We're deleting that part. Okay. Timestamp 7:44. Okay. The warrior knows how to ferret out the truth because truth comes easy to them. The word satyam also has to do with controlling your prana. Because when you speak, you're exhaling prana. So prana control for warriors is job number one. That's why warriors like to do physical stuff. They like to climb stuff, they like to break stuff, they like to run, they like to do things that challenge their prana. Prana is your breath, but prana is also the force of your intention projected into the world. So when a warrior, whether they're shooting an arrow or hitting a putt, they have the ability to project their prana and connect to that target. Boom. And get as closer to it than the other types, because the ability to project and control their prana comes naturally. This is the hidden meaning of satyam. That is also why a 5'1", 100-pound warrior can often take out a 6'4" educator, because they can look and they know exactly where to poke you, and you go, I give. Warriors know how to hit your weak spot. They have a tremendous focus. And that has to do with the ability to project their prana. This ability to focus, then, if we're helping and working with warriors as clients, let's say a warrior comes to you and you're a therapist and they want to know, how can I achieve X, Y, Z? Visual aids are one of the best ways to help warriors achieve their goals. If they want money, make pictures of $100 bills. Put them up everywhere that warrior is going to see them every morning. If they want a relationship, put up Radha and Krishna or whatever means a relationship for you, and put it somewhere where you can see it. Warriors need to be able to connect their prana to the thing that the object of, that they're focusing on. And that happens most easily through sight, because it also relates to the fire element, and we'll get to that. So, satyam. Then, for merchants, asteya. For merchants who are especially able to take advantage of people financially, it just comes easy to them, asteya is the best virtue. Because ultimately, merchants are the most generous of every Dharma type. If you have any merchant friends, hit them up for a favor. It is good for them to give, because charity is the primary virtue of a merchant type. Charity is the remedy for a merchant type. You can give them all the herbs, you can give them all the asanas, but if fundamentally they're still lacking purpose, connect them to a charitable cause and you will see the herbs begin to work. You will see the asanas begin to bear fruit. Because a merchant needs to be needed. They need to feel like they're the benefactor of others. So whether it's, taking kids out on Little League night and buying everyone pizza, or whether it's whatever the charitable cause is, if you're a merchant, connecting to that can mean the difference literally between life and death. Merchants can be some of the most famous people in the world because merchants relate to the water element. Again, we'll get to the elements in a bit. Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, all merchant types. Water is emotion. They're able to evoke feelings in people. I'm just a dull educator and I'm talking stuff here, so it's like, that's nice. Old Blue Eyes comes up here. Hey, how you doing, honey? How you doing? Hey, nice to see you. You're looking, you're feeling something. In emotion, merchants are able to evoke emotions. So, for merchants, giving is the antidote. Because merchants secretly feel empty inside. They'll never tell you, they'll never confess it, but that is their core wound, I guess you can say, in psychological terms. So, asteya means don't steal, do the opposite, give. Give. For the laborer, it is brahmacharya. Brahmacharya means walking with the divine, but in theory, what it means in practice is abstinence. For the laborer, this is the primary virtue because laborers are supposed to create cohesive families. If a laborer is married and goes out to the nightclub and cheats all the time, it is not good for a cohesive relationship. So laborers need to keep it in their pants and practice, not abstinence, but keeping their love and their attention and their shakti within the family that they've chosen. So this is the primary virtue of the laborer type. We'll talk a lot more about that in a little bit. Then finally, the outsider. Oh, the wonderful outsider. So many of us are outsiders. Outsiders, we have the freedom as outsiders to pick and choose whatever we want. Oh, I like a little bit of this. I like a little bit of that. And that's great. We are given freedom to essentially choose our own identity. It's a beautiful freedom that the other types do not have. But at some point, you have to say, okay, that's enough choosing. Now let me do something with it. Aparigraha means don't covet your neighbor's stuff, the car, the wife, the job, the lawn, because outsiders can very much see what others have. Why don't I have that? That's interesting. He laughs funny. I'm going to copy. I'm going to laugh like him. Oh, I want to drive a car like this person. And that's okay, because outsiders model themselves. Outsiders are from another planet. You're not from this loka. So you're on this earth, and you're looking around and going, okay, who do I want to be? And you get to pick and choose a little bit. But at a certain point, usually happens around mid-30s for people. You go, okay, I've done a lot of crazy stuff. I've tried a lot of crazy things. Now, how do I consolidate them into something that says, this is who I am? And this is the unique person that I am. Outsiders have something called their unique expression that they have to share with the world. Whether it's fusion cuisine that combines sushi and steak, whether it's Bikram yoga, I use this example a lot, but it's true. You combine things that no one else thought of combining before, and you present them to the world. And if you've done it well, the world goes, hey, that's pretty cool. And if you haven't, they go back to the drawing board. And that's a major source of anxiety for outsiders. Outsiders, if they come to you as a massage therapist, clinical practitioner, I guarantee you they will suffer from some level of anxiety. And the organ, tomorrow morning we'll talk about the different organs and the health of each Dharma type. The skin is the outsider. So someone has tattoos, probably they're an outsider, or at the very least in an outsider period. If someone's skin is somehow emphasized, this is the outsider. But this is also the organ through which we approach the outsider. Skin touch therapy is number one for outsiders, to help calm that primordial anxiety that exists within them. That primordial anxiety from times past when the villagers came with pitchforks to run you out of town because you were different. You carry that in your genes somewhere as an outsider. And it's still there. And you go, are the pitchforks there? Right? But that same anxiety that protects you also prevents you from sharing your purpose. So at some point, it's great to grab around for a while. But at some point, you have to stop and say, okay, here is the gift I have. And I'm going to share it with the world. See what happens. Okay? So these are 5 yamas. There are also 5 niyamas that each also have to do with one of the Dharma types, and the 5 commandments. Any questions so far? Yes? I was trying to skip all my faults and problems. Okay. So, for the educator, the primary virtue is nonviolence, ahimsa. And that's because when we use force, it backfires. If I try to be very aggressive with people, it always backfires on me. For educators, karma comes very swiftly. We literally experience instant karma more than any other Dharma type. You step on a snail and you become aware of it, and then take ownership of it. And as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, the moment you associate with an action, you're karmically bound to it. You step on the snail and you go, oh no, only spirit, that was spirit. If you can manage to do that, you're okay. But most of us, 99% of the time, will step on the snail, educators, and go, oh, God, why did I do that? Or even if we don't say that, we go, it was just a little snail. 2 minutes later, a bird poops in our head. Or something falls and hits us on the head, or someone insults us. We suffer the karma of violence at whatever level, at the snail level or at the massive social level, it doesn't matter, immediately. Educators are the archetype that you see in comic books played out. The brilliant mastermind who wants, now the hero has come, right, to fold the pie and says, you see, I've devised everything brilliantly. Do you see my plan? Because educators want to teach you about how brilliant they are. Their job is to teach. They can't help it, even when they're twisted. So this is the comic book, and you see, and I made this pit here, and I planned this, and then this guy would do that, and then the warrior just goes, shut up, and boom, you're finished. So the educator has to realize that regardless of how intricate your plans, when you use force, it always comes back to bite you. And people like Dr. Martin Luther King, who's an outsider, playing an educator. And we'll talk about this idea of outsiders are the only type who can take on the Dharma of another type for a while, for a day, for a year, or for a lifetime. So some of you who are outsiders in here may be playing warriors. Some of you may be playing educators. So you have to pay attention to 2 dharmas. Those of you playing educators, 2 dharmas. And we'll talk about how to integrate that tomorrow. Yes?
So I think you're answering my question. My question was about hybrids.
Hybrids, correct.
So outsider's the only one that meshes, everyone else
Outsider, so if you took the test in the book and you're like, man, I could be any one of these dudes. All of these questions make sense. Then you're an outsider. It could be that you're in an outsider period of life, and that's where things become very customized, very individualized. So these 5 types can take on, can become much more specific. But typically, it's only the outsider who can blend and meld and become and act like one of these. So for example, I use this example in the book. David Beckham, an outsider, a rebel. He was hated in Britain until he scored this goal against, who was it, Croatia or somebody. He scored this amazing goal where he curled the ball around the wall and it went in. Then everybody, oh, we love you now. But they hated him before. He's an outsider playing a warrior, and that role fits very nicely for him, and he's played it all his life. He's an athlete, fights for stuff, and so on. You might be an outsider playing an educator. Joseph Campbell. You guys know Joseph Campbell? When he was on Skywalker, Joseph Campbell, a famous teacher who was at Mary and William College for 40 years, taught myth, the power of myth. And on the show, The Power of Myth, on Skywalker Ranch, when he's interviewed by Bill Moyers, Bill asks him, so what's the word you use to describe you? Now, this guy's been a teacher for all of his life, written like 50 books. Does he say wisdom and education? No. He says maverick. Because his whole life, he bucked the system. He was fundamentally an educator, but his job was a teacher. He was playing this role. He was a maverick because he was a white Western guy who loves the Divine Mother. He loves Judeo-Christian tradition, but he says, man, Hinduism has the truth too. And guess what? So does Buddhism. And they're awesome. There's so much truth there. And people go, no, just tell me about the other stuff. But he's a rebel. And he was speaking to a certain audience that didn't want to hear that message, but he didn't care. So you can be an outsider playing a merchant. Outsider, Kurt Cobain. Outsider-merchant combinations are especially dangerous. If you see these people as clients, you have to, these suicidal. Because merchants naturally have a lack of self-esteem, which drives them to, hey, let's go to a party, let's see people, let's buy the newest BMW, let's have this, let's experience stuff, trying to fill this void. Outsiders naturally run anxious. When you combine these two things, you can have amazing talent, amazing creativity, but also at the same time, amazing lack of sense of self. So those of you who are therapists, whether you're massage therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, priests, gurus, whatever you do, when you run across this combination, be aware. Be aware of what they're feeling inside. They may be very gregarious on the outside, but feeling a little bit empty on the inside. Yes?
Question, you talk about outsiders landing somewhere at a certain point, but couldn't an outsider just take on different personas throughout their life?
Correct. But what I'm talking about, this idea of aparigraha, at some point in your life you have to say, okay, I've done, say, the educator thing for a while. Let's see what I have to share with the world from that, and then I'm going to move on to something else. So it never stops. You don't share your gift once and go, okay, I'm done, I'm out of here. You keep reinvesting, you keep reinventing. So without outsiders, we wouldn't have iPhones, iPads, we wouldn't have new ideas in the world. So we need outsiders. So let's make them nice and happy and calm, give them some abhyanga to do, so that we can have more beautiful innovation. Question? Yes. And then we'll take a eeny, meeny
A couple things. Gandhi
break.
was an attorney, for one.
Yes.
And can you talk more, a little bit about how the period and the Constitution or whatever the type interact and how to distinguish that?
How to distinguish which is which? It's a great question. So those of you who have taken, there's a 10-question test on my website and in the book. Usually people will score one or two types highest. So let's say you score warrior 8, outsider 6, and then everything else is 2 or 3. Then one of those, the 8 or the 6, represents your Dharma type. And one of those represents the life cycle you're in. And it's hard to know just from the test which is why the Jyotish chart helps us narrow in and say you're actually a warrior in an outsider period.
And when you say period, how long is the period? Do we go through multiple periods within a lifetime, or what?
It depends. It depends. So I hate to say that because it depends on, well, again, your horoscope, but it also depends. The woman said there in the back, she said, at a certain point, you give up a role and you go to the next one. Well, that's another period beginning. You can feel when a different period comes to take you because the people you hang around with change, your environment changes, and in a sense, and I give some examples in the book in the last chapter about life cycles and how you can tell which cycle you're in. So even if you don't have Jyotish, if you don't have a chart, just look at your surroundings and see, am I in a laborer period where security, paying the bills, paying off my student loan, and taking care of my security is the most important. Likely you're in a laborer period, and that's great.
Are the types ruled by different planets?
Yes. They are. And on Sunday, I'll talk about that, how to find your Dharma type in the chart. It's very easy, actually. It's not very difficult. Okay? All right, let's take a teeny tiny tea break, and we'll come back. That was the content of tonight. I got nothing left. So, to fill in some time, I guess, I'd like to make an announcement. This is a first for me. Not making an announcement, but what I'm about to say. People who take this seminar the weekend will be eligible for something that I'm doing for the first time, which is a Dharma type certification. And Dharma type certification to be a Dharma type practitioner. And this is something I'm going to implement later this summer. Some of you are therapists, some of you, whatever your background is, this certification will show that you've taken a certain amount of hours with me, and there will be a test associated with it. And I get a lot of requests for readings, and many, as you've heard, I can't accommodate. I don't do readings. I don't do consultations. And I would like to refer some of those out to, and I do refer a lot of those out to my colleagues, whether they be Jyotishis or otherwise counselors. So, but I find that people who have read the book like the material, but I want to take this to another level to where if you like the material and you understand now how to work with it, how to take a client who is a warrior, but they've lost their purpose. They're a warrior, they're a Ferrari without a steering wheel. They have tremendous power and ambition, but they don't know where to focus it. And so they can become cynical and unguided. That you know how to help them, how to begin to steer them in the right direction. So everyone who takes the seminar will be eligible for this Dharma type certification, which will involve a test. There will be a small fee for the test, but it's a test you can take as many times as you need to until it's passed. And then I will put your names on my website as practitioners, level 1 Dharma type practitioners, and we'll take it from there. So this is the first time I've ever talked about this. Even nobody knew about this. So level 1, that's a good question. The question was, what do you mean by level 1? I want to be level 2. I want to be the top. I'm just assuming things. Level 1 because in the future I would like to actually train people to use the horoscope to find the Dharma type. And it's actually quite easy. But for people who have no background in astrology, it takes a little bit of a learning curve. What are the planets? What are the houses? And what are the basic building blocks of Jyotish Vedic astrology? Don't worry, I'm not going to turn you into a Vedic astrologer because all Vedic astrologers are cursed, just so you know. The first curse is you can only be 70% correct, even at your best. And the reason for that is there's an old story that says Jyotishis became so knowledgeable at some point that they were able to predict not only for people that were living, but they wrote down the charts of people who would be born in the future and exactly who they would be, who their parents' names would be, when they would come to visit the astrologer, everything. And this is called the Nadi tradition. And there were very naughty boys and girls who did that. So the gods cursed them because this knowledge was Nadi, N-A-D-I. But and to this day, those leaves, because they didn't have Kindles, they had leaves, which then were in danger of being kindled, so they had to be preserved. Those leaves still exist. So if you go to India and you avoid the 70 to 80% of the charlatans who say they are Nadi readers and happen to fall on one of the 20% who are authentic, and they find your leaf, then they will read the syllables of your mother's and father's name. Tony, John, Mary. And you go, and they're like, Mary is your mother? Mary? Yeah. And Tony is your father? Yes. And then the hairs on the back of your neck will stand up because you go, how the heck did they get that? And then they will give you other details, like you have one brother with a limp or something. Things that are very specific to your family. And only after all of the criteria have been met, and there are some over two, maybe 3 dozen criteria, not just the names of the parents, but your profession, how many brothers and sisters you have, whether you're married, whether you have kids, da-da-da-da-da-da. When all the criteria are met, and it's been established that that's your leaf, then they read about your life and your past life and why you're here, et cetera, et cetera. So those astrologers were very powerful astrologers. And because they had this incredible knowledge, it is said that they challenged the gods in their wisdom and their knowledge, and the gods cursed them to only be 70% correct. So no, I will not turn you into Jyotishis. I will not, unless that is your Dharma. And that is the Dharma of a few. But you can use Jyotish, the chart, to help determine the Dharma type. And in the chart, as per your question earlier, you can find out the specific life cycle. That is very useful. If you know you're in an 18-period Rahu cycle, just FYI, Rahu is an outsider life cycle. So anyone in Rahu, you're in an outsider period. Done. Doesn't matter where Rahu is in your chart. Doesn't mean you're an outsider, but you're in that period. So being able to read that in the horoscope is very, very valuable, even if you're not an astrologer. It's another tool in your toolbox. So that will be what I will term level 2. People who can use the horoscope and then counsel based on the period people are in and their Dharma type. And that will come a little later. I'll do online teachings with that and so on. Make sense?
How many levels?
1 million levels.
How many lives?
Because I need to pay my rent, Anyway. This is honestly, this is the first time that I've presented this, so it won't be very many levels, but I do want to make a distinction between people who really understand the Dharma type and then people who understand the Dharma type and can work with a person's horoscope to counsel them directly. So far only 2 levels. Okay? Yes?
The Nadis, you said they read leaves. Did they pick a leaf off a tree, or was it like tea leaves?
No, great question. This is before the printing press. So in India, which is a very humid place, there's certain leaves and parchment that are, Kashyapa would know a lot, maybe more about this, where things were written, there was no parchment, paper, pulp, trees, right, to make papers, so things were written on actual leaves, but long, banana leaves or large leaves, not little tiny leaves like tea leaves. So this isn't a divination of crushing leaves and reading. You're actually using the leaf as a parchment. And then there's a certain way to treat the leaf so that it doesn't degrade and to store it. So in medieval European times, they use hide, they use leather, and that, very finely sort of treated, and it became a scroll. In India, they didn't use leather, they used leaves, because they had a lot of them. Make sense? And India is fundamentally an educator country, so ahimsa is more their virtue, so using leather wouldn't have been super great for their dharma. Yes, countries have dharma types. What do you think America's dharma type is? We are merchants, which is why we're so popular. And why do people love America? Because the exports that we export good cheer, we export a sense of well-being, a sense of feeling good. Coca-Cola, jeans, cowboys and Indians, Hollywood. Right? These are things that, they make you feel, but they make you feel good. They uplift you. So that's the gift that merchants have, the ability to uplift others. Saturday, we're going to talk about the BFIT system. Well, we're going to start talking about it now. BFIT stands for Be Yourself, Evolve, Find Your Name, find your name, time your movements. I stands for inspiration, and T stands for time your movements. It starts with be yourself. Be yourself means understanding your Dharma type. That's what we've been talking about here tonight. It only starts with your Dharma type. Okay, fine, I get it. I'm an educator, I'm wimpy, I'm very lustful. Educators have a lot of lustiness. And this is something that they have to deal with. My body is not that reliable as a source of strength. Okay, I understand all those things. Now what? The next step is how you evolve. Every Dharma type evolves and devolves when they take on qualities of other Dharma types. In your packets, you have a model for evolution and devolution. This is a model for your lifetime. So here's an example. For an educator, I evolve when I take on qualities of a warrior type. And a warrior evolves when they take on qualities of an educator type. A merchant evolves when they take on qualities of a laborer, and a laborer evolves when they take on qualities of the merchant. Oprah Winfrey, laborer type. Very good at building community, creating a sense of family. She looks like a merchant because she's dynamic. She's out there promoting herself, doing stuff, but she's fundamentally a laborer type. Acting like a merchant is good if you're a laborer type. Acting like a merchant is horrible if you're a warrior type. So knowing, because they disintegrate into each other. Merchants acting like warriors, bad. Warriors acting like merchants, terrible. America, a merchant country, when we create wars, and this is not intended to be a political thing, but when we go out, it's about the Dharma types, and create wars in the world, people hate us. They hate us because we're merchants. We're meant to build wells and give food and create opportunities and give people a chance to rise up in life. People love us for that. We build a well, we get fans. We destroy a well, we get enemies because we're merchants. Russia is a warrior country. Educators and warriors warriors and merchants don't get along. So we've had this thing with the Russians, the Cold War. You heard about it? Ultimately, the merchants win because merchants know how to out-resource the warriors. The warriors are actually better warriors. They're stronger, tougher, better at fighting. Russians are tough, man. I don't know a lot of people, maybe the Afghanis are tougher than them, but they are tough people. But we, as a merchant country, in a sense, overcame them, defeated them, however you want to call it, because we knew how to use our resources. The Roman Empire was a merchant empire. The more they expanded, the more fragile their empire became, and eventually they collapsed. So this is a warning for merchant people as well as merchant institutions and even merchant countries. Be careful of becoming a warrior. So evolution is very important. It's the second step. Okay, I know now I'm an educator. Great, thanks. See you later. No, it doesn't stop there. You have to know how to continually evolve. So for me as an educator, I have to hold myself up to walk the walk. Educators are fickle. We're not disciplined. We should be doing yoga, but we're not. We know yoga philosophy, so we don't do yoga asana. We have ways of intellectually prevaricating and not being authentic. So for me, I have to evolve and behave like a warrior. Stand up straight. Be authentic. Be there at 5. If I say I'm going to be there at 5, I'll be there at 5. Not be like, well, there was a show on and it was pretty cool. And that's a disintegrated educator. Okay? How to evolve. Then find your name. So tomorrow we're going to be doing a few exercises on how to find your, number one, your totem animal. Your totem animal. Have you guys heard of this? No? So a long time ago, I used to teach fitness classes. And one of the first homework assignments I gave was, everyone go home tomorrow. You're going to come back. And you're going to discuss your totem animal, what you came up with. You're going to meditate on this. If you can't meditate on it, consult with your friends, with your family. Get feedback from people who know you well. And you don't have to be right, but come up with something that feels right for you. Your totem animal has a lot to say about you, your daily habits, how you express in the world. So one client came back after one weekend, and he said, I'm a bear. I said, great. What kind of food do you like? He said, I don't know. I like fish. I eat everything. I said, okay, well, you like sweets? Oh, man, I love sweets, but I get so sick after I eat sweets. I'm like, yeah, you're a bear. That's your type. So what's good for a bear? And then he started thinking about, okay, there is a certain diet that is beneficial for me as a bear, as a coyote, as a pig, as a bird, as a snake. There are certain dietary things that are natural to you because this is the totem animal that you carry, and other things that are not. Another way your totem animal can help. So those of you who are in the seminar, please start thinking about this tonight, because we're going to discuss it a little bit tomorrow. Now, this is also a very private thing. So if you don't feel like discussing with the class, that's fine. Absolutely, I honor that. But still, please do the exercise tonight. Talk to your husband, your wife, get some feedback. Because the totem animal can also help you in your relationship. Let's say you're a dog and he's a cat. There are some issues that need to be worked out if you two are going to be together. Make sense? If you're a rat and the other person's a cat. If you're a bird and someone is a mouse. Then living together, you will have to learn how to accommodate each other. The bird will need certain space. The mouse will need certain comforts. And listen, again, in the totem animal, there's no hierarchy. There's no one animal better than another in terms of your totem archetype. But understanding your core animal can help you. So now, are you an eagle educator? Are you a bear educator? Are you a snake educator? will help you to narrow down your best expression and will help you to understand how to relate with others. Does this make sense? So those of you who are coming tomorrow, this is your homework. Please work on, sit and think about. And it doesn't even have to be that specific. One client came back, she said, I'm some kind of bird, I don't know what kind, but I'm a bird. I asked her, what do you like to eat? Because I ask everyone that after they tell me. So I'm going to be asking you, what do you like to eat? She said, well, I don't know, I eat a lot of nuts and seeds, I eat bread, and I said, but she didn't realize, and she goes, oh. No, before she said, oh, and I asked, well, do you like to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner? How often do you eat? She said, no, I just snack throughout the day. And then she went, oh, because that seems natural for her. Now, mind you, she wasn't gorging on stuff all day, thereby occupying her center and she was a skinny, mini, tiny thing. And so she was eating just enough to pass through and then finding some more. And that worked for her. So understanding the totem animal, then understanding Vata, Pitta, Kapha, Dharma type, can help you really customize a plan if you're a practitioner for your client and for yourself. And then you can begin guessing the type of your friends. Right? In addition to understanding diet and relationships with your totem animal, you can understand the type of exercise. If a person is a cat, they will need explosive movements because they have fast twitch muscle fibers. They won't want to run long distance endurance kind of events. They will want quick, explosive stuff that's fun to do. If they're an elephant, what do you think they'll like? You think they're going to like doing all this kind of stuff? No, give them weights to lift. Give them slow, steady, methodical movements. And they will enjoy it. They will persevere and they'll go, wow, this is the best trainer I've ever had because they understand me. So, you get it? Does this make sense? So, who is here till tomorrow? Who's coming? Okay, those of you guys who raised your hands, this is your homework assignment for tonight. Okay? All right, so that's part of finding your name. The name can be so then the name will also be a word. So am I a wise bear educator? Am I a sly bear educator? Am I a compassionate bear educator? Right? We're going to find words to help us name ourselves, because in English, in older cultures, your name said who you were. If you were somebody good fellow, you were a good fellow. If you were Mr. or Mrs. Underhill, well, guess what? Guess where you lived? You lived under the hill. Names are largely descriptive. Fletcher means someone who makes arrows. Smith was someone who was a blacksmith. Now, we've moved away from these things because we're no longer bound by our social image. That's not who we are. But let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. There is benefit to understanding your true name. So we're trying to come up with your true name. Finally, in your horoscope, there are special sounds that Dr. Chopra calls your primordial sound. And he teaches something called primordial sound meditation. This is in your chart. You own it. It's not owned by anyone else. It's in your horoscope. And I will show you where to find it in your chart. Your primordial sound can be used to help you find your name. It can also be used as a mantra, as Dr. Chopra teaches, as a meditation. Because the sound you hear most is the sound of your name. And if you have a name or a nickname that is not suitable for you, that's not working for you, it can detriment you. Like Lady Diana. What did we call Lady Diana? Lady Di, Lady Di, Lady Di, Lady Di, Lady Di. And the lady died. Names can have an effect, either by constant low-level repetition or intense short-term repetition. The same is true of mantras. When you do a mantra and you do it with all your heart and full devotion and you're crying to God, God, this is it, it has an effect, immediate effect. If you cry to God on a lower level, not at a level 10, maybe at a level 5, but you do it with enough time, dirgha kala, as the Yoga Sutras say, with enough time and perseverance, it will also have an effect. So the idea behind finding your name is finding the word, the sound that is most rings true for you, and that is your mantra. I am Wise Bear. It sounds like a Native American name. Why not? I am Dances with Wolves. It was a good movie. Right? Your life can be that movie. You can be that Wise Bear, whoever. And this is already taken, by the way, so don't take this. That's done. Guess whose that is? Okay. So find your name. Then we will talk about inspiration, how to inspire based on the elements. And we'll discuss this more on Saturday, how to use the elements of air, water, earth, fire, and space that are specific to your Dharma type. All right, I'll give you an example. Some of you aren't coming for the weekend, so educators are air element. You need air in your face. Get on top of a mountain and have the air move through your hair. Ride a pony. Get on a motorcycle. Have the air move through you so you can get in touch with that element, because that is your core element. If you're a warrior, get in touch with the fire element. Have a salt lamp, light candles before you eat. Every morning before, as soon as you get up, go out and greet the sun. Do sun salutation. Connect with Agni, the fire element. That is your element. If you're a laborer, the earth, plant, work with the earth. Work with gardens. Work with soil. Lie on the ground. Sleep on the ground. Don't sleep in a bed. Sleep on the floor. See how it changes how you feel, who you are. If you're a merchant, be around water. Guess what? Merchants are best with money. Which properties are the most expensive? Those in the middle of the desert or those on the ocean? Yeah, properties around water. Even if they're in the middle of the desert, if there's water around, they cost more money. Water means value, means prosperity. If you're a merchant, get in touch with water and use water in rituals. If you are an outsider, learn how to use the space element. And I'll give you special techniques for that as well. And then finally, timing your movements. And this is where, again, knowing the life cycle that you're in helps. Knowing that you're in a labor cycle for the next 3 years. Okay, cool. I'm in a labor security cycle for the next 3 years. Then that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to try to fight and do something that is not right for me in this time. Maybe I want to break through and travel and do all kinds of stuff, but I have obligations. I'm in a labor period which is always about fiscal responsibility, building a family, building your home, your community, settling down, establishing yourself. That's a laborer period. Is that good? Damn straight it's good. We wouldn't have cities and society if there weren't any laborer dharma types or any laborer people in laborer periods. So understanding the period that you're in will help a lot. And that we have to look at the horoscope for. Or as I mentioned earlier, just looking at your life and feeling where you are. You don't absolutely need the horoscope. It helps. Yes?
Are cycles certain set times?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are major cycles and subcycles. The major cycles are set. Actually, the subcycles are also set. But let me answer that by saying not particularly. And here's why. Because you might run a 3-year laborer cycle indicated by one planet, but if you have another planet that's also a laborer, then you're going to continue running. So it's going to become 5 years. So it's all specific to you. And I hate for it to sound very nebulous, like, oh gosh, well, I know my Dharma type, but I don't know what period I'm in. Well, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it. And yet it is simple. The Dharma types are simpler than the other disciplines I put up. To master Jyotish, forget about it. You know how long I've been studying Jyotish? I still can't read a chart. I'll look at a chart and go, I don't know what it is. I've been studying it for like 15 years. Mom, if I had studied to be a doctor for 15 years, I'd at least be working at some hospital somewhere. Jyotish, I look at it and I don't know. It's amazing. It's a very, very difficult science. So be glad that you're not Jyotishi. Okay. Any questions? Yes?
Dharma type for Japan?
Oh, good question. So here are some Dharma types for countries. Canada is an educator country. Mexico is a laborer country. Japan is... It's good. I think they're a warrior country. They live by a very strict code of ethics, tremendous discipline. They're not afraid to go to war. Although, listen, there's a misnomer about being a warrior. So, warriors are essentially problem solvers. Warriors like to speak the truth. This idea of speaking the truth has to do with getting to the essence of something. Quit rabbling on, get me the essence of the thing. So the warrior wants to get to the heart of the matter and solve the problem. If you have to go to war, that is the least creative solution to a problem, because the best warriors solve problems in the quietest way. Oh, everything's finished. Nobody even noticed. Done. Next problem. The more bluster there is around solving a problem, the more disintegrated that warrior is. Because when a warrior moves in the direction of a merchant, they attract more attention to themselves. Think about a star athlete. Oh, you just slam dunked over to somebody. You scored 100 points. How do you feel? Very rarely will a warrior say, I got lucky tonight. It was a great effort. They're taught to say that, but inside they're like, I'm the man, right? I'm great. And then they'll go to the nightclub later and have drinks for everybody because I'm so great. It's hard to resist that when you are that great, when you have power. Whether you're a man or a woman, doesn't matter. If you're a warrior type, you have power. And it's hard to keep that reined in and quiet. But the best warriors are the ones who look like educators. Humble. Like the old picture of the old sensei. Oh, sure, you can have my wallet, fine. But when push comes, done. Okay, I'll take that back. Thank you. See you. Right? And it's finished. There's no, come on, I'm going to get it. Right? That's moving towards the merchant. So warriors, don't confuse this word war with your dharma. It's about solving problems efficiently and effectively and moving on to the next thing. Okay? So Japan, I believe, is a warrior country. They have a very strong warrior culture from the shogun days all the way down to today. Discipline and so on, work ethic, all that good stuff.
Does it correlate with the planets as well? Would it be Saturn? Or?
Yes, so it does correlate with planets. It correlates with the moment of that country's inception and the horoscope of the country. So every event in time and space has a chart. So if I draw this is a Vedic horoscope. I could also draw a Western horoscope. It's not as good of an illustration. Do you wonder why I went to Jyotish? I can't draw a circle. I'm not Michelangelo. Michelangelo, this is how he got into art school. Do you know the story about Michelangelo? How he got into art school? Everyone else had to take this amazing test of, what they knew. Michelangelo, he had some guts. He went up to the board and he did this. Except he drew a perfect circle. His teacher saw that and said, oh, you're in. Forget the test. Because to draw a perfect circle indicates the level of skill that he had. So that's why I don't do Western astrology. So if I were to draw this, what is this a chart of? Is this a chart of a person? Not necessarily. It's a chart of a space-time event. You're a space-time event, you're a space-time event, space-time event. A space-time event is something that takes birth, has a lifespan, and has an ending. Space-time. And it exists somewhere in space and time. So we human beings are born, we live, and then we pass away. Countries, other events, sporting matches, debates, elections, they all are space-time events. So Jyotish can be used to help us gain an insight. So the chart of a country will help us determine its Dharma type. So the chart of the US shows a merchant country. England, also a warrior nation. Germany, warrior nation. France, I think, is a merchant country. Although, you know, your guess is as good as mine. I haven't seen their horoscope. China's a laborer country, big-time laborer country. Communism flourishes in laborer countries because this idea of the proletariat, right, solidarity through work, it's very romantic for laborer cultures, the Eastern Europe. The problem is that it hardly ever works in the long term. But China, so laborers evolve when they move towards the merchant. So they're evolving. They're becoming more and more mercantile, which is why they're a world power. We in America would evolve much more if we moved towards the laborer as well. So instead of, what's that? We're not. We tend to be moving more in the warrior direction. And how do I know? Well, look at Rome. Rome loved the spectacle of the Colosseum. People hurting themselves for sport. Well, look at what is the number one sport in America? Football, the most violent sport there is. It used to be baseball, and baseball is a laborer sport. So you can tell the direction a country is moving by looking, you know, like you can tell a lot about a person by looking at their friends. Same with a country, by looking at its tastes. Used to be baseball, and that's when America really grew. Now it's football and a lot of excitement and gore and that kind of stuff. There's nothing wrong with football, mind you. It's a warrior sport. Football would be great in Russia, but it's not. It was born in America, and that's why merchants have a poor track record of taking care of their warriors, whether they're coming back from war, PTSD, or they're athletes who, once the contract is over, forget about it. And 5 years later, did you know that, I forget the percentage, but it's an incredibly high percentage of NFL athletes who within 5 years are bankrupt, partly because of health costs, partly because of lack of care from the merchant institution that used them for wealth and then spit them out once they weren't useful anymore. Mind you, I love football. I love baseball as well. But understanding the context of each is very important. Yes, Diane?
Is it helpful to live in certain places with your Dharma type? And
Yeah.
Is that related to astrocartography? I've always heard that astrocartography is kind of, is it really accurate or not?
Astrocartography is a separate thing. It's not related to the Dharma type. However, absolutely it is useful. Listen, if you're a laborer or a merchant, living in America is great. Because as a laborer, you're getting your value met. You are getting your due in society. And a lot of people who do labor-type professions, contractors, service industry, get well paid. Nurses are well remunerated in a merchant society. It's good. If you are a warrior, it's tough to live in a merchant society because it's hard not to sell out. So, if you're an educator or a warrior, would living in Canada be better? Probably. Or living in a country that's not your devolution point? Yes. So if I'm a laborer, living in America would be good. Living in Canada, not so good. Because Canada is an educator country, and I, as a laborer, devolve into educators. Not as good for me, generally speaking. Okay?
There are a few other countries you know offhand?
It's a good question. I have to look. There are lists of people have done this actually. Look at the different charts of different countries. There are some. England is a warrior. India is interesting because South and North India are different. In a sense that they're divided, and they're divided by Dharma. So India is both labor and educator. Oh yeah. What would be an outsider country? Let's see.
Australia.
Australia, very good. Yeah, Australia is just by virtue of their history, and the fact that their landmass is completely separate from any other. Yeah, Australia and New Zealand would also be an outsider country. Good questions, and I think questions that you're answering yourselves as you.
How set is the Dharma of a country? So far, if we trace its its inception, maybe there's a revolution and a constitution that's writ for it, and this country finds itself a laborer country. But 200 years down the road, there's another revolution, I'm thinking of China, during the Ming Dynasty, a warrior country.
Probably. Very good question. So I would ask, how set is the vastu of your property? Well, the moment you sign the paper that this is the shape of your property and these are its boundaries, that becomes its vastu. But let's say you want to expand and you get an, what do they call it? An easement to make it this. Now the vastu, and you've legally now purchased this extra amount of land. Now the vastu has become different, and it will have a very different effect. Now you have an extension of the southeast corner, which will absolutely have an effect. Same thing with a country. The moment that a constitution is ratified and it's been signed, boom, that's the chart of the country. But whenever there's a revolution and a new constitution is signed, it's a totally new country. Its boundaries might be the same, or they may be different, but because it becomes a new space-time event. So it's a different country. So absolutely, I think ancient China would have been totally different.
But doesn't it become a different country because it evolves into something else over time?
No, it gets a new horoscope. So countries get to do that. Human beings, we have to die and be reborn. But in a sense, the country has died and become reborn. There's a new regime. It was a feudal system, and now it's become something else. It was this, now it's that. And as soon as the constitution changes, the rulership, it's like selling a house. It gets new owners.
What about a relationship, though? Would it shift literally when you get married, whatever tradition that is? Does that create a new constitution within the dynamic of a couple?
A couple. So if you get married to someone, does that change your Dharma type? No.
No, I mean within that union, they must have their own jointish, right? That relationship.
Yes. So every relationship has its own composite chart. So you can look at the chart of a relationship. A great site to go to is astro.com. It's a free website of this nature, of the circle persuasion. And don't hold that against it or don't hold that for it. It is just a slightly different way of looking at the sky. But astro.com has something that you put your chart, your partner's chart, and it will come up with a composite horoscope. And it's free, by the way, so this is a great resource. And that composite horoscope is a chart of your relationship based on your planets melding. Then you can click on different parts of it and read what it means. So it's a great little free resource. Sorry, astrologers, but taking your business away. But
So, say you know your Dharma type and you have your inspiration, but you find yourself in an organization or a country that is of a foreign type. What are the best strategies that one can use to develop and evolve rather than devolve when one is surrounded from the outside by these other influences, which for your type might be
pushing you to devolve.
exactly.
Don't devolve. Because even though in the short term it may look like, okay, I'm just sort of going with the crowd and I'm just trying to fit in for my family and I'm doing it for the right reasons, leading you away from your dharma creates a vibration in you that ultimately other people can feel, and you will never succeed in, even in, Krishna says, Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushtitat. Even your own dharma, though crappily carried out, that's exactly what Krishna says, is better than doing the dharma of someone else really nicely, really well. Because even if you think you're doing someone else's dharma well, you're really not, and people can sense it. And I'm sure a lot of you have had this experience. You worked at a job where you knew it wasn't for you. You've been in a place, or even in a relationship, you knew it wasn't for you, but it was convenient, and at the end, it never ends well. It never ends well. Other people at the job can feel it. So the answer always is do your dharma. Do your dharma, leave the results to the divine, or move if you can. Because ultimately, even though we live in a merchant country, if you stick up for your dharma strong enough, even though those people don't understand you, they will respect you. Dr. King stood up for nonviolence because he was an outsider playing an educator. This merchant country doesn't understand that. Everyone boo-hooed him. Even after Johnson signed a legislature that forwarded his cause and the cause of blacks in America, he immediately started speaking up against the Vietnam War. And even his own closest people like, dude, shut up. We just got this, dude, shut. He's like, no, I can't. I can't go against my conscience, which is nonviolence. He had to speak up. So he was and then people split from him because they said, dude, you're not doing the politically correct thing. And he says, I know, but I have to do my dharma. And even if it gets you killed, you have to do your dharma. Or move and do your dharma somewhere else. Yes?
What if a person decides to turn their life into a very deep spiritual direction and say, for example, they join an ashram where they meditate all the time or just have spiritual pursuits? What would their dharma be?
It's a good question. It depends on their internal orientation. So on one level, the Dharma type is a tool. It's a tool to help you become the best you can be, to achieve enlightenment. It won't achieve enlightenment for you. And if you're at a level where you can leave the names and forms of institutions like Dharma type, like man, woman, like householder, not householder, like black and white, and you've transcended that, then you don't need the Dharma type. You've gone beyond. Until you do, don't burn the boat. Means until you've crossed that river, and you know you've crossed the river, don't burn the vehicle that will help you get there. So if someone is sitting and meditating all day, as per your example, well, if they're an educator, their meditation will involve mantra and sound and the vibration of that sound and wind, because wind, the air element, they have to speak. If they're a warrior, they may be doing a lot of penance, fire, and doing bandhas and crunches and, and breathing and stuff that ignites their fire. Stuff, If they're a merchant, they may be doing bhakti yoga. And their meditation now is not cerebral, I have to perform 50 million mantras and say them precisely in this way. It's bhakti. If they're a laborer, it's also bhakti yoga and service. And if they're an outsider, nobody knows what's going on inside the outsider's mind.
They're spaced out.
Outsiders, and you have to be careful because outsider practitioners can be the most revolutionary. Agora, Tantra, if you've met real Agoris, Tantrics, and people like this, they will change your life. Even if you don't want them to change your life, because just being around an outsider walks into a room, it's not a joke. Outsider walks into a room, what happens? They change the environment. Whether they're a Hell's Angel coming in and they smell like they've been riding for 10 days and, hey, what's going on in here? What kind of thing's going on? Right? They're louder, they just change, and all of a sudden everything changes. Or they may have a different vibration. It may not be negative. It may be, but you feel different around an outsider. And it makes people uncomfortable. And if you're an outsider, understand that you have this effect, even on the most subtle level. It's just what you do. So how you do it and the motivation behind how you do it depends on how successful you are. Jesus was an outsider. He went into the holiest of holies and he looked at the priest in the eye and he said, "Whores and tax collectors are going to heaven before you, scumbag." Tax collectors, he said this is in the New Testament. He was a rebel, but he was this bookend, because we're going to talk about how the outsider evolves. It's the most beautiful path to evolution, because you as an outsider are always on the razor's edge. As far depraved and deprived and unloved and damned as you think you might be, you are a split second away from salvation, always. And that's illustrated in the Christian tradition, in the Jesus on the cross, and on one side there's one outsider, thief, another side there's another. And the one on the one side says, "If you really are the Son of God, get us the hell out of here, man. Do something, do some miracle. You're supposed to be some great..." And the one on the other side said, "Shut your mouth. We deserve to be here. This man doesn't deserve to be here." And then he turns to the Lord and says, "Lord, remember me when you're in heaven." And then Jesus turns to him and says, "You're already there." The one outsider is the blamer. "Get me out of this, man. They did us a raw deal. I got a raw deal. I'm something. I'm not, I don't fit in. I've got this problem, that problem. I'm not the right color. I'm not the right height. I'm not the right gender. Screw it. The system's against me. I'm going to get mine." The other outsider says, "Yes, I am all those things, and I take responsibility for it. And Lord, with your grace." And as soon as you take responsibility and own your life and who you are, and it could be horrible circumstances. Maybe you were abused when you were younger. Maybe there's so many horrible things that happen. It's how you respond and take responsibility for them, because at a certain level, outsiders understand that everything is karma. And Jesus was able to do that because he scoured his own self. When he went into the desert, his own mind, his buddhi, or Satan, the accuser, however you want to see it, offered him all these things, because Jesus was a powerful, powerful yogi. He could do anything. And something inside him said, "You want to rule the world? No. You want to be this? You want to be that? No. I want to just do my Dharma." He was tested. And he had to fast, and he had to excoriate himself, all of his shortcomings and failures. And even right up to the time that he was on the cross, he fell into that, blaming God. "God, what the hell? Why are you doing this?" And he said, "Oh, wait. Oh, okay. It is over." So that last little bit of outsider blame was still there, and it got cleansed. And there was it, enlightenment. So I don't presume to know these things because I don't presume to know these things. But the highest of the high outsider really scours themselves for their own dishonesty. And that's why he could look at people and say, before you blame, before you try to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye, take the bloody log out of your own eye. Because he had lived that. And Jesus taught karma. I hate to say it. I hate to say it in that way because it may disturb some traditional views. But when he said, someone slaps you, give the other cheek, he wasn't being highly moral and look at how much I can bear, how much injustice. He understood that, listen, there is a karma you have with this person that they want to be violent to you. Use it up. If they want to borrow your shirt, give them your coat as well. Right? Means play out this karma to where you don't owe people anymore. And then he says, in the next line, he says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you will not get out of this until the last penny is paid. Something to that effect. This is in Matthew and in Luke and in a few of the Gospels. Means you have to pay everything you owe. So might as well start now. Come on. They hit you. Come on, hit me again. Just get it over with. Do it. They want to take your coat and your house and this. Okay, fine, take it. Because at some level, I owe this. There is a karma. And then he said, to the followers who wanted to follow him, but he saw that they weren't ready. He said, unless you hate your mother and your father, you are not worthy of me. Wow. This is crazy stuff. He was a huge, this is an outsider, right? So, and then on the other bookend, we have outsiders who don't take responsibility, who blame and wreak tremendous havoc in the world. So, the Buddha was also an outsider. All the avatars are outsiders because the word avatar literally means someone who comes down from somewhere else. Ava means down. Tara means to swim, but it also means to cross over. So someone who crosses over from somewhere else and comes down to this loka, this earth, this planet. So all avatars are outsiders, but they all play some role. Rama was an outsider playing a warrior. He had to be just and solve all the civilization's problems. Krishna was a merchant. He got to play. He had to have fun. He had the wealthiest, the most good-looking. He was everything, right? He had fun. Buddha was an outsider. He was an outsider playing a warrior as well. Who's this? Buddha. Buddha was born in the warrior caste. So to his body, his lineage is properly a warrior. But if we consider him an avatar, then he's an outsider playing that role as a warrior. So it was a little tough for me where to put him. But I think some people would take offense if I put him as an outsider because he was born in a royal sort of caste lineage. He was a prince.
And a prince wouldn't be an outsider?
Could be, but he also underwent incredible penance that most of the other types couldn't. The pictures of him in India show that you could see his spine through the front, through his stomach. Who can deprive themselves to that level and still stay committed to their cause? That's pretty, not me. So warriors are able to do immense penance, which is why yoga, the path of penance specifically, is that part of yoga is specifically for warriors. Make sense? You're not convinced, kind of. Okay. We'll leave it. So, any final questions? Because we have actually gone over our allotted time. Final questions before we conclude? What's that? No more questions. Okay. So, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is in the book, The 5 Dharma Types. This material is not in the book. This is in the forthcoming book called Sex, Love, and Dharma. And it's about more than just your Dharma type. And that book will be out in October of this year. But if you would like a copy of the 5 Dharma types, it's double the price now because you didn't buy it before. But I think there are still some in the bookstore. And I'll be happy to sign them for you as well. Okay, so let's end with a final prayer, which is a student-teacher prayer. Sahanavavatu Sahanau bhunaktu Sahaviryam karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you guys.